Mark Fairhurst is the National Chair of the Prison Officers Association and joins me now from Liverpool. Mark, good afternoon to you. With all of the focus on this the past couple of weeks, does it feel like your members in some ways are being thrown under the bus?
Well, I'm glad that the government is listening to the voice of the frontline, because it's the frontline that have all the solutions. And I'm looking forward to sitting down with the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, to go through the plans and how they plan to reduce the risk to the public by these errors in release.
Because we're talking about prisons right now, but certainly in the most two recent cases where the men are both now back behind bars, it seemed to be related to miscommunication from the courts. Is that a common thing, that prisons are just getting the wrong information?
It is quite common, and a lot of releases in error are actually from courts, or because of miscalculations or warrants that go to the wrong place or don't arrive at all. So I think if we get a modern system in relation to our IT systems that communicate with each other, we can eradicate a lot of this human error.
Yeah. So digitising it and doing it properly this time, that's what you'd hope to see, is it?
Well, it needs a major investment, but this is not going to happen overnight. To implement a new IT structure with a digitalisation of the entire system and overhaul it is going to take some considerable time.
Let's talk about some of the other issues we hear around prisons and prison officers. We hear that there's a shortage of prison officers first and foremost, and the ones that you can recruit are only getting something like 9 weeks of training in some cases before being put into the difficult situation of working in a prison with inmates. Is that causing problems?
It is, and of course we have a lot of overseas recruits at the moment who now do not meet the new thresholds when it comes to salary because of the change in the legislation when it comes to overseas immigration. So we're looking at losing probably about 2,500 people who are on the front line in our prisons because they don't earn enough money. So when you think about low wages, extremely violent workplaces, and an absolutely ridiculous retirement age of 68, it's not really a very attractive job offer.
What did you think about the early release schemes? Of course, when the Labour government came to power, the explanation from them was prisons are getting too full. We need to ease the pressure. I don't know if you agree with that. Certainly seemed to be the case at the time. But the early release schemes that then came in, have they caused more headaches for prisons and prison officers?
Well, I think the problem was we had at one point less than 100 spaces left in the adult closed male estate. So some urgent action had to be taken. But since Labour came into power, there's been at least 3 separate early release schemes. I'm relying on the lowest paid of staff in the service, in the admin hubs, to recalculate those sentences 3 times. And we're not talking about a couple of dozen. We're talking about tens of thousands of prisoners who needed their sentence recalculated using pen and paper, no modern technology whatsoever. So inevitably, there was going to be human error. And that's the problem. And of course, with the sentencing bill, Matt, next spring, you're looking at most prisoners now only serving a third of their sentence in a prison and then the rest on licence. So that's further recalculation next spring.
I have to ask, Mark, we talk about mistakes leading to prisoners being released accidentally. Are there any mistakes being made where prisoners aren't being released when they should be and end up spending too much time behind bars?
Well, that's another facet of this entire system failure, that some prisoners are not getting released on time and we keep her longer than their warrant gives us permission to do. And of course, if that happens, they can claim compensation off the state. So system-wide, there are failures throughout and it needs addressing urgently.
What is morale like amongst your members at the moment?
Well, morale is at rock bottom simply because our violent workplaces, assaults on staff, are at another high peak. You know, the more assaults on staff than there's ever been. We're dealing with a more violent cohort. We're in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. And these people, prison officers, we're very proud. We're very professional. We want to protect the people, the public, and do a really good job. But when we get system failures and when we get the wrong information and when we're overburdened with work and burnt out because of the staffing shortages, then inevitably mistakes will occur.
Mark, look, just to finish off with one or two more questions. One of the biggest issues with prisons is recidivism, that reoffending. A lot of offenders have offended before and they come back in. Are your members, are prison officers able to do the rehabilitation bit enough at the moment to try and prevent that from happening? Or are they just trying to keep prisons working to a basic level?
We're fighting fires every day on the front line, and in prisons like Liverpool behind me, it's just a human warehouse, and that's simply because we are so overcrowded and there is not enough activity spaces or offending behaviour programmes to keep people busy, give them work skills, for them able to gain employment when they're released, or address their offending behaviour. And what we need to reduce the prison population and give us a fighting chance to protect the public by offering hope for prisoners in our care.
Mark Fairhurst, appreciate you joining us from a wet and fairly noisy Merseyside this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed, Mark.
You're welcome.